Hi, my name is Julia. I'm from DVL Express and I'm working in the safety department. Let me tell you some tips about ELD, which is coming on December 16, 2019. The ELD, electronic login devices, is fast approaching, and the deadline of AOBRD is December 16, 2019. Let's talk about these devices closer. What is automatic onboard recording device? It is the earlier version of modern ELD. Both solutions need to be plugged into the vehicle and automatically record hours of service information. The main difference is that AOBRDs record and display much less information than ELDs. For example, an ELD can identify information on the driver's change in duty status, logging in and out, location information, and even vehicle data such as engine power on or off, vehicle motion, and system malfunction. Also, it has auto switch for driving at 5 miles per hour. ELD can display log edit history when AOBRD cannot, so it's easier for duty inspector to review any changes in the log. This is important when it comes to unassigned driving time. DVIR, driver vehicle inspection report, needs to be performed. Otherwise, the driver will have a remark that DVIR is not performed. As a result, it's violation. All auto-generated events cannot be edited in ELD. All edited entries are recorded and require annotation and can be reported to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration by email. When in AOBRD records edits but doesn't really display this. Every driver needs to be aware of hours of service rules. Needs to know how many hours he can work and drive per day, have enough time for rest to be able to drive again. So let me walk you through 4 main hours of service rules. So rule number 1, 11 hours driving time. That means the driver can drive up to 11 hours during consecutive 14 hours period. Rule number 2, 14 hours limit. Driver has 14-hour period when he can perform all his duties, including 11 hours of driving. After running out this time, driver must take 10 consecutive hours break before he will be able to drive again. His 14-hour window and 11-hour driving limit will be open for him again. For example, if driver starts his day at 8 a.m., he won't be able to drive after 10 p.m., only after 10 consecutive hours of break. So it means he can start driving at 8 a.m. in the morning. Rule number 3, 30 minutes break rule. Every 8 consecutive hours of driving time or on-duty time, or driving time and duty time combined, driver must take at least one 30-minute break, either off-duty or in sleeping berth. So for example, if driver started his pre-trip inspection at 7 a.m., then was driving, doing pickup and fuel, he needs to take 30 minutes break by 3 p.m. After the break, he can finish the rest of his driving time. Rule number 4, 70-hour in 8-day period. Driver cannot drive after 70-hour in 8-day period unless he restarts his clock. 70-hour cycle includes driving and on-duty times such as pre-trip inspection, pickup, delivery, fuel, DOT inspection, time spent on base station, etc. To restart the 70-hour cycle, driver needs to spend 34 or more consecutive hours on off-duty. The 34-hour restart is an optional. So what driver has to do if he doesn't want to stay with no work for 34 hours? The answer is to use the recap hours. So what is the recap? Each day you get more hours added to your 70-hour clock depending on how many hours you were on duty and driving 8 days ago. How does it work? Let's say driver just started new job on Monday without any previous on-duty hours. If he works 8.5 hours every day from the first day until the following Monday, he will have in total 68 hours on duty. So when he rolls into Tuesday, his day number 8 shifts from Monday of the last week to the previous Tuesday. And the 8.5 hours that just fell off his rolling total is available for him again. There are two types of logbooks: paper log, physical form, and electronic device, or how else it calls, e-log. Paper logbooks can be used just in emergency situation. For example, if driver is on the road and have some problems with a tablet, or there is problem logging in to the system, he needs to use his paper logbook. How long you should keep the hour of service documentation? So, if an emergency situation has happened and the driver was driving with a paper logbook for a couple of days, he needs to know how to keep it in the truck and what does he need to show if he will be stopped by a DOT officer. Driver has to have 8 days, including today, of logbook and supportive documentation of his current load. Driver doesn't need to keep the documentation from previous trips in the truck. Logbooks can be checked any minute by DOT officer when driver is on the road, way station, and even in a truck stop. So the logbook must consist the correct information. For example, if driver had a fuel at 11 a.m. in Chicago, Illinois, it needs to be shown on the receipt with the same time and the same location, and needs to be marked on the logbook as on-duty status with the same time and location. So if driver has an emergency situation such as having a problem with his electronic logbook, he must use physical form, paper logbook, during this trip. He must keep the copy of the 8 days, including today, of his logbook in the truck, and needs to submit logs to his motor carrier within 13 days. Not to keep logbook record is the serious violation. Not using logbook in the right way is a serious violation. What kind of work is included in on-duty time? The answer is easy. It is all time when you are performing work. The time when driver starts to do pre-trip inspection, when right for pickup, delivery, waiting to be loaded, unloaded, inspecting, servicing or fueling the truck, waiting to be dispatched, working on shipment paperwork, and providing samples for drug or alcohol tests. All these kind of duties must be marked as on-duty status. All fuel receipts, pickup, delivery, DOT inspections must be marked in the log at the same time as it was performed. DOT inspector can check all supportive documents or receipts in any time. Driving also counts as on-duty time status, but it is marked on driving on the logbook grid. What kind of work is included in off-duty time? By understanding the definition of on-duty time, it will be easier to understand what is considered off-duty time. It is the time when driver is relieved of his duties and responsibilities at work. After parking the vehicle and leaving the parking space, the time is considered as off-duty time. Driver needs to remember to check his status after the vehicle has been stopped. If driver will not do this, it will go automatically on duty, and driver needs to remember to certify or sign his logbook in the end of the day. Certifying or signing the logbook will appear on the logbook grid with the same time and location. Not to sign his logbook, that's going to be a violation. How does the sleeper berth provision work? The first option, driver can spend 10 consecutive hours on sleeper berth or off duty, or both combined, and reset his 11-hour driving and 14-hour duty limits. The most important, not to go on duty or driving while taking 10 hours rest. So driver has to make sure that he has found the right place where to stay for a sleep and rest. The second rule, the equivalent of at least 10 consecutive hours off duty. To do this, driver must spend at least 8 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth. This rest period will not count as part of 14 hours shift. A second rest period must be at least 2 consecutive hours of off-duty or sleeper berth. It does count as a part of 14 hours shift. It doesn't matter which rest period driver takes first. After he completes his second required rest period, he will have a new point on the clock from which to calculate his hours available. New shift will restart at the time when driver completed his first required rest period. What is personal use? It is time when driver is driving truck when he is relieved from work. when driver is out of hours and needs to get to the first safe place, if driver is empty and going from the yard to his home, during the restart if driver needs to move his truck but he always needs to go back where he was in the beginning of the restart. Personal use will not work for direction to delivery or pickup, for maintenance, operating empty for delivery or pickup, or after being placed out of service. Driver has to use yard move while he is driving at the facility. All his miles need to be recorded. Weigh stations. A weigh station is a scale situated along the highway. Truck drivers may be inspected at the scales. The DOT inspector usually do a walk around and then can decide to pull driver over for an inspection. Inspections range from level 1 to level 6. But let's take a look on 3 of them, which are the most important. Levels of DOT inspections. So the first one includes a complete check of both the driver and the vehicle. The driver will be checked to make sure he is not under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. The vehicle will be checked even underneath, including the cargo, seats belts, brakes, tires, headlamps, fuel system, and so on. So level 1 is a full inspection of the truck and the trailer, plus driver. Level 2 is very similar to level 1 inspection, but the only difference is that the officer who's checking the vehicle is checking it without getting under the vehicle. So it's visual check of the vehicle. Driver is checked the same as during level 1 inspection. Level number 3, it is driver only. Drivers are checked for driver's license, medical card, endorsements, vehicle inspection report, hours of service documentation. Also checked for things like seat belts usage and use of drugs or alcohol. If something went wrong during the inspection, for example, false record in the logbooks, being on duty more than it's allowed by HOS rules, under the influence of drugs or alcohol, not having a CDL, or driving with suspended driver license, will place driver out of service. So what does it mean out of service? During the stop, the inspector will ask the driver some basic questions about his or her recent activities and ask for today's logbook and the previous 7 days, supporting documents as trip bills, receipts, tolls, etc. So here are some examples of violations resulting in out of service. On duty beyond maximum periods permitted, no records of duty status, no previous 7 days logs, or false record of duty status. Local drivers. If driver operates within either 100 or 150 air miles of his work location, he may not use electronic logbook. If you are a CDL driver, you must operate within 100 air mile radius, must be completely off duty within 12 hours, must report back to the same work location every day, must have at least 10 consecutive hours of duty between each shift, must keep the record showing time in, time out, and total numbers of hours. The 150 air mile exemption is non-CDL drivers who stay within 150 air mile radius of work reporting location. Do not drive through any state that requires a CDL. Report back to the same work location every day. Must keep time records showing time in, showing time out, and total numbers of hours. 16-hour driving windows allowed twice per 7-day period or after any 34-hour restart. Drivers are required to fill out the paper log if any of these criteria listed above is not met. For example, a CDL driver has to travel 300 miles to deliver the load. He is required to maintain a paper log for the duration of the trip. If a driver maintains record of the duty status for less than 8 days in a 30-day rolling period, he or she doesn't need to have electronic login device. So are you ready for ELD? Changes are hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. If we all work as a team, we will succeed. Thank you for your attention. Drive safe.